Hello. So I'm happy to see you now. And so today we discussed the topic which really somehow connects the previous discussion with which was about organic type of color, organic type of textile coloring. So, and I feel it like it is important, maybe to feature so the things that really is important, especially if we preserve authentic crafts and maybe if we're interested in different types of fiber and textile manipulation. So, and I thought that it would be really nice and logical somehow to continue so the previous discussion and to highlight the way. Oh my God, sorry. So to highlight the way of how different types of arts and crafts can be combined. So, and in order to give more chances for us to practice. Well, so I feel like I just collapsed everything that I really wanted to say because, well, I have technical issues in the beginning. And actually, I have forgotten to say thank you for all my new patrons who joined this month. So you cannot really imagine. So what type of energy, so and what type of support you really give me. Because, well, every just a new person, so every just new reaction to different types of works which I share. So they really give me energy and give me lots of encouragement, so which really light me. And at the same time, I really want you to give back. So even sometimes even more that just a pattern or maybe a tutorial. So because patterns and tutorials can not really be compared with the type of encouragement that you give me. Well, and so thank you. And actually, so this month I shared some works about like lemon stitching. So we have finished this series of lessons, and I hope that you share some of your works, maybe so in your social media and tag me there. And if you go and follow the lessons, and if you don't like something, so I really appreciate if you share some of your ideas of how I can really improve it. Well, and returning back to shibori technique, returning to this very authentic, very old, like 1,000-year-old craft. So I really want to somehow imagine that we are traveling in the Orient. I think it's kind of like a cradle of shibori technique, especially if we just call it like shibori or maybe sometimes sibori. So because, well, if we just rely on the way Japanese people pronounce this, it would really more close to sibori. But if we speak it like, well, the Western type of the world speaks, so I feel like it's more convenient to say shibori. So I would use the second variant. And, well, as for the type of practice and maybe some background that this type of manipulation has, I feel it like many people usually feel it like this is a type of like tie-dye technique. And actually, they're absolutely right, because the key idea there is just a knot, and sometimes knot is very metaphorical and sometimes it's very practical thing. And as for today, so I'm sure that you have read it in the beginning because I have forgotten to switch it off. So I have found a quote said by Jean Cocteau. So he usually called himself he's a clone prince of modernism. So and actually many people called him the same way. And actually this quote says like children and lunatics cut the Gordian knot which poets spends his life patiently trying to untie. Well, he actually spoke about himself, but I think like we as artists, so usually do the same thing. So we also just always try to ask ourselves different questions. So we always get busy with just one the same activity. So asking maybe different type of interrogations slow, if we are just smart enough, if we're creative enough, if we are worthy or any stuff like this. So and actually, so this somehow moves us forward. And well, those people who usually spend lots of time on just finding balance between these type of questions, maybe, so they approach to the essence, so they approach to the answers. Well, and in this way, so knot is also just give us potential, and at the same time, it just makes us make this knot, and afterwards it just let us the energy, the purpose, the idea, the courage to untie it and get very fruitful, bright, and sometimes very unexpected results. So especially if we speak about shibori or sibori, so usually this type of fiber manipulation so is very mysterious, because, well, at the same time, so as we have discussed in our previous meeting, well, so colors derived from and got just received from organic dyes and especially plants. So just like an exercise of maybe sometimes lots of expectations, but maybe less expected results. So at the same time, so sibori or shibori, so it's also about lots of surprises. Well, and as for just discussing this type of old technique, I feel like it's impossible to do without diving into the history and maybe just looking through and flipping through very authentic and at the same time very iconic things, which typically associated with antique sides of shibori technique. Well, and here we have a piece of a bag which was used for storing feathers. So it is from Peru. And well, actually, so we just flew from the Orient to Peru, but it just because, well, actually this is the oldest, the ancient, the most worthy piece of cloth that historians and those people who really appreciate textile as the representation of the development of human civilization. So this really features the various type of practice that artists and actually folk artists use to make the design, to make the pattern for this piece of textile. Because if we just, well, see it aside, so we see that there are lots of just tiny maybe circles or maybe lines which somehow just make this design full. But if we just see this pattern from the practical side, we'll really analyze it like, well, any piece of maybe pottery or maybe glass or maybe any type of other craft and art. So because, well, every circle represents the process, the creative process, so which was conducted to achieve this design. So, and if we see it maybe a bit later, so having known the techniques that I'm going to highlight today, we even can just spread each part of this textile piece and name all the types of manipulation which we can see there. And I feel it like sometimes it's very important to see maybe some different pieces in the museum, not only like a full picture, but also so somehow imagine how did the artist just put things together in order to create this full image or maybe this full piece of art. Well, and if we just go to the Orient back, so and somehow just try to imagine how did the people use knots and colors. So we can see that, well, various people use almost very similar approaches to using knots, to using threads and using fibers in order to create huge patterns or maybe small patterns assembled of different types of elements. So here we have just the examples from India, and also there is a small, very small piece from Peru, just like a piece of mask. So it's very bright and very energetic. As we have discussed before, so we know, we can guess what type of colors and especially pigments was used for dyeing this type of textile. So can you remember cochineal bugs? So which really helped to obtain very bright and very stable red color. But if we look to the Japanese tradition, we can see that typically, so it was like blue and white. So, and as for the blue, so typically it was used indigo, and well, Indians also used indigo lots of time, but well, the classical white and blue shibori is just the landmark of Japan. Well, and each group so had each like approach to this type of dyeing, and at the same time, so many cultures used a knot, so not like just a way to decorate the full piece of fabric, but also so they use not prior the weaving, so the weaving of the fabric. And especially if we just go to like imaginary, so we just try to travel in imaginary way today. So if we just go to Uzbekistan and see how these people used the method of applying knots to threads and fabrics, we can find like that Uzbeks, so they put a knots prior weaving fabric. So they used this method to weave ikat, and the same was practically used in some regions of India, so which where artists so weaved different types of rugs. So and they also just before they colored threads, and afterwards they used them to weave big pieces of textile. Well, and as for the coloring methods which were used in Western Africa, so here we have also the example of it, and actually so it represents a very bright, and sometimes I feel it like it's very psychedelic pattern. So because the colors which were used there, so they somehow very bright, and somehow they represent a very like extreme contrast between the brightest, the palest, and well, so sometimes it's just about the environment and the way that maybe Africans see the beauty in the surrounding world. Well, and actually I gathered a pile of videos so to share with you, and I feel like just it's really important to keep your eyes peeled for the coming post, because there I'm going to share lots of interesting facts about tie-dye technique and about different traditions of using this method, so across the cultures, across the territories, across different types of lands. So because actually land is very important because it gives resources, and so if we look to the type of materials that Japanese and Chinese used to use as the matter which they manipulated. So it was typically cotton, so it was silk, and if we go to Himalayas, we can find the wool, and especially the same as for Peru. And if we go to, for example, Philippines, we can find a abaca tree fiber, which is very hard, is very just difficult to press, squeeze, and so it really affected the way which really just served to be the way that people used to process the fabric, and actually it has also affected the results that they get. Well, now let's imagine so that we are just not only traveling around the globe, but let us imagine that we are traveling through the waves of the language. So as for the word shibori, so people just imagine, so when I just say like the word shibori, so usually so people say, well, it's just like some technique of tying a body, so but it's not. And some people associate it with the traditional way of textile decoration, maybe clothes decoration, which was popular in America during the 60s. So it was a typical type of maybe breathing new life to old clothes, popular in hippie movement. And I feel it like if we speak about shibori, there is something else in the background, because shibori is not only about the way to decorate the textile surface. Maybe it's about the background, like the century, and maybe the lots of like historical events background, which just concentrated in one single knot. So while shibori artists use thread to isolate different areas of textile, so they played with these repeated patterns. So they tried to create designs, and they actually tried different methods. So they used different like extra pieces like pebbles, glass, and sometimes wood sticks. So to roll, to squeeze, and to just combine it with textile in order to get different designs on the surface of the fabric. So typically different sort of limitations influence on people creative thought. So, and if we just try to analyze how did they create this, I think that we will learn not only about the textile, but also about their historical background, about their personalities, and maybe sometimes about something that nobody really knows. Well, and how about the way that people, I have forgotten to show you. I have found the piece of woodblock print, so it really features the way that Japanese lady uses textile. And if we just also try to analyze this image, if we just try to observe each particular detail very attentively, we can notice that she just stitches through a piece of white cloth. Maybe it's somehow embroidered, or maybe it just has some kind of knots all around, sprayed all around. So, and I feel it like just in a while, just having, when we just go through all the typical descriptions of how each knot can be set, so we can just call, so how this method can be named. Well, and as for the modern way of approaching to shibori, so here there is a design created by Ralph Simons. So he worked for Dior in the, so somewhere in the early 1000 or 2012 or somewhere there around, just like in the second decade of the 21st century. Well, and here we feel like this type of textile manipulation so represent a bit different picture. So if we just look back and somehow just rely on the background that we have knowing about shibori, so here we can understand that, well, maybe here it was applied the same technique, the same approach, but it really created so a 3D surface made of textile. So it was not dyed, it was just like on the pressed, squeezed, in order to imitate some structure which really looked like it came from a micro world. So somehow it really reminds me the technique which is called Miura. So, and later we also will go through it and you will recognize it. So, and actually I feel it like it really gives lots of opportunities for us to try in our studio and maybe somehow balance it and maybe mix it up with embroidery, or maybe use it as a very creative way of embellishing clothes or accessories. Well, I feel it like just like a huge scope of opportunities. Well, and if we just go to more traditional way of understanding shibori, I really want to concentrate on the technical side. So on the way that people used to approach to pressing, squeezing, and using textile in order to maybe to fold it. So I feel it's very close to the type of using paper, especially. So shibori is not about using textile, so it can also provide you various chances to use paper and somehow balance it with textile as well. So to mix it up, to combine it with textile. So because while origami and shibori in this way, they are very neighboring activity. Well, really, as I have mentioned, so shibori is a part of mystery. So here I just have found different types of shibori swatches. So I feel like they are very close to the color which I have here in my background. So it's bluish, very nice, like mixing with white. So it's very, very intensive. At the same way, it's very airy and light. So just like the light that we have so in the morning, so the light that we have in the evening. So it's very bright and airy, and it's just like life. Well, and somehow shibori, as I have mentioned, is more like a mystery. Sometimes it's just the principle of it. Maybe it can be just seen as a principle of it. So you never know what you get. So, and at the same time, so there is no like bad patterns that you can obtain. So every time you press and fold and you tie a knot, so every time you just go to a voyage of discovery. So you never know what would be the destination. And at the same time, when you get the result, you try to go through the acceptance. So in Japan, there is a popular way of appreciation of imperfect, and actually so the beauty of imperfect things, which is called wabi-sabi. So, and I feel it like shibori this as in this way, just like the reflection of that. So whatever result you get, so even if it is imperfect, it looks like imperfect thing. You can do lots of just tiny things, and maybe not so many tiny things, in order to maybe to make it different, maybe somehow to well, to how to say, so maybe embellish, or maybe to make it different, in order to find beauty in it. While some people use kintsugi to give new life to the broken piece of porcelain, and at the same time, so they not only give a new life, but they also just produce a piece of art. Well, and also I have a beige on me, so it came not so nice way of color in the textile, but I add there a couple of stitches, so which really look like sashiko stitch, and somehow I felt like, well, this piece has a potential so to become a kind of like a brooch maybe, and at the same time, so I just try to accept that not all things really become perfect, so but they have a right to live, and they can really serve for good. Well, and now I share the book. So because, well, this is kind of like manual that really harbors, and it really contains lots of information. So it is written by Jane Callender, and I feel it like, well, in our modern days, she's just like the true connoisseur of lots that really is about shibori, because so this book contains lots of information about her personal research that she really did so within many years, and she just collected lots of facts, curious facts, like historical facts, well, maybe folk facts about shibori, and she traveled around Japan in order to collect everything, maybe so to listen to people, and so she gave these type of insights in her book. And also there are lots of information containing the techniques, containing the folding, containing different mixtures and concentration of the dyeing stuff, in order to get best results. So as I have mentioned before, so you never know what you get, but actually if you follow the pieces of advice she shares, so in most ways, so the results would be really nice and more expected. Well, and as for the techniques, so which are typically practiced in Japan, so for example 1,000 years back, so there were decorations so widely spread among just poor people, so could not really afford themselves to buy expensive clothes. So, and especially about maybe during the Edo period, so when, well, it was a very huge difference between upper class and those people who were just like on the margin of poverty. So this technique really flourished. So because, well, those people who could not afford themselves to buy expensive clothes, or maybe just to buy clothes at all, so they used to dye those like old ones, like made from different like very cheap materials, so in order just to bring new life to the old pieces of wardrobe. Well, and actually, so with time, this type of creation, this type of craft really moved on, and especially during the Tokugawa era, so it was just between the 17th and the 18th century, so things really started to change. So because people started to appreciate the way that, well, crafted clothes look, and usually they started to order different beautiful things from local craftsmen. So, and here I have found the example. So actually the first one is a wood block, so here we have like a man of money, so that means that he's very rich guy. So, and actually, so on the right there is an example of kimono, so it was just shibori dyed, and so the material which is used there is just a fine blend of silk and cotton, so some parts are made of silk and some parts are made of cotton. So, and here we have just an example of a really monumental work. So when I see it, I just try to dissolve it into parts and, well, try to analyze how these patterns, how these beautiful flowers were made. And if we just look to the pattern of kimono, we can see that there are just a traditional patterns which also used in silk embroidery. So recently I shared the lesson devoted, which is just about cherry blossom, and there it was like a cedar, so it was like a beautiful just branch of a pine tree. So in here we have just the same pattern, the same part of wood, which embellishes the sleeves and the shoulders of this kimono. Well, shibori is just like a tremendous way of using a tiny stitch and a tiny knot. And also, so if we just go to India and see how they used it, oh my god, I have forgotten to show it to you. Yeah, here we go. This is a bit, no, I mixed up the buttons. Yeah, so have a look of how it looks. So it's a bit larger. Well, the man of money, and the pattern on his sleeves and shoulders, which really feature beautiful flowers, and actually the kimono on the right. And if we go to India, we can see that here it was just almost like the same pattern, so used and created by tiny knots. And if we just try to understand how did they call this technique, so we can find that it was called bandhani. And at the same time, some of you can notice that there is a very, very similar way of calling bandana, so which is a piece of rectangular cloth, which is typically used to just cover head. So when it is hot, or maybe sometimes it's widely just colored and used as a type of wrap, so during especially summer season, so to protect head from heat, from sun. Well, but actually here bandhani so has another meaning, because it really has very like the etymology of this word is also about tying a knot. Well, and here we have an example of old piece, old piece of clothes just saved in the museum, and actually it features the way that knots were used to protect piece of fabric from coloring, so to use it as a resist dye technique. Well, so let's go further, and so here we have also just a piece of shibori textile, but if we just see it aside, we can notice that the tiny dots which look like a sort of polka dot, or maybe spray of circles just spread around the piece of fabric. But if we just look and observe it closer, we may notice that this is tiny circles which are made of a thread turned around a piece of fabric which was picked. So, and afterwards it was just protected from coloring by just applying some piece of threads around it. Well, and this type of technique widely spread in Pakistan, in Rajasthan, in India, and Punjab. And if we just see the palette which was used, well, it just like was tremendously diverse. So because it was the opportunity to use different types of like organic dyes, and especially like plant colors, and also it was just the use of mineral dyes, and well, people tried to color their clothes the same bright as the colors around them. So because there are lots of beautiful trees, lots of flowers, so, and the animals are very diverse in their color palette, so people try to use the same way of dressing themselves. So, and well, a beautiful and very rich palette was widely used. Well, so here we have Leheria type of color, using color, and so in order to decorate fabric. So this means a kind of like wave, and this type of fiber coloring and fiber decoration, so, and especially textile decoration, which really reminds me the type of, I have forgotten the name. So kanoko, no, not kanoko, miura shibori, which also produces the wave, the kind of wave on the surface of the fabric, because so somehow it was the influence of the the sea, which was nearby this land, and people tried to celebrate the beauty of nature. So that's why they used some kind of like natural associations, maybe connected with their personal outlook. So and they used this type of decorating fabric and somehow maybe using this approach to textiles because it was very traditional for them. But so shibori in India, or bandhani in India, or maybe leheria in India. So it's a very new and very, not new, but very young type of textile decoration because it was brought to India by Rabindranath Tagore. So he was famous by his winning of a Nobel Prize. So and actually, so he tried to enlarge the number of techniques, like creative techniques, practiced in India. So that's why he tried to introduce this typically Chinese but practiced in Japan craft. So to the land of India. So, and actually, if we just try to compare the way that Indians and especially Japanese people use it, I feel it like, well, Japanese are more skillful, are more handy with using these techniques. However, so nowadays there are lots of designers who use this approach, the approach of textile decoration in their collections. So, and actually there are lots of pieces of souvenirs spread and sold around India that really feature this type of technique, which really very nice approach to color decoration, especially if we use it as a way of applying organic dyes, because, well, somehow it's not like an old craft, so which widely practiced to keep the record of it and somehow to pass it into other generations of people, maybe so to introduce this to kids, but also just the way of using everything that we have by our side, like the colors that we can just take from the environment, and well, so without making any harm to it. Well, so, and I feel it like now really need to dive into the practical side of it. So the way to manipulate with textile. So what shall we do, and somehow what shall we maybe make? So what shall we just practice? What shall we do with our hand in order to obtain the result that we really want? So, well, anyway, shibori usually associated not only with Japan, but also so people imagine so a pattern which really reminds a spider web. So, and here we see like the example of it. And if we just remind the turban, which I demonstrated just a couple of slides back, so you can notice that this pattern is also very like the one which was featured there. So just like circles, which are pressed together, which are wrapped with thread, and this thread really protects colors, penetrate the textile piece. So, and afterwards, it really makes this beautiful like spider web design. So Kumo shibori is about spider web. Well, so the next one, Miura shibori, is about like creating a piece. So you remember the dress created by the house of Dior, which really reminds a surface came from the micro world. So which lots of peaks with lots of just the structure, which really makes the 3D structure. So it really transforms a plain surface of textile into the 3D piece of, I don't know how to say it, so into 3D piece. But actually, so this method is about this. So Miura shibori is the way of picking a piece of cloth and afterwards just stretching it a little bit in order to just to wave around it a piece of fiber, so to protect it from coloring. Well, and if we speak about the difference between the previous method and so like Kumo shibori. So Kumo shibori could also be the way of using different like extra pieces. So we can put into the center of the cloth like maybe something like a stone, or maybe pebble, or maybe a glass bead. So, and to wave around it, so the fiber or the textile. thread. Yeah, yeah. So in order to keep it there and somehow to make the pattern different. But if we speak about mirror shibori, so it's very fine and it has a very very fine peak. So and actually, so the point the design so comes like a very very fine pines. So it really remind like the pine tree pines. But actually, when the cloth is dyed and when so all these threads taken away, so the pattern comes as the one which is demonstrated in the picture. Well, Kanako shibori. So it's also just very like the first like spiderweb pattern, but it's not about like huge and like monumental or maybe just gigantic patterns. So just like a very very tiny patterns, which are also done in the same way. So just like a small circles which spread around a big scale, a big space of fabric piece. Well, Arasha shibori, it's very like Leheria, which we discussed before, so about like the waves or maybe just like the sea. And actually the main idea which is used here, just like the piece of cloth is wrapped around a tube, which can be made of plastic or maybe it can be metal. So water pipes, it's just like a good idea to use it for making this pattern. And afterwards, all this piece of cloth, so it just somehow it's squeezed. So usually, so it can be just tied with strings or maybe rubber. So whatever the craftsman has in the studio. So and so this type of clothes design obtained after so the piece of cloth spans like an hour in the dye bath. Well, and here I feel is like the most fascinating way of using knot and especially using stitching at the same time. So Nui Shibori is about the technique which was featured in the main in the book of Jane Callender. So so here we have like the example is of very very simple and well at the same time very geometric way of squeezing the cloth, of pressing the cloth. So because the stitch, just a simple stitch of running stitch, so it just pierces the surface of the fabric and afterwards is just squeezed, so and put into the dyeing bath. And afterwards, all these threads usually can be taken away. So and the traces which they leave, so construct beautiful images and usually so it can be obtained lots of ways of decorating cloth because well so people can use flower patterns like just the image of flower or maybe so different types of images of animals. So later I'm going to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So and well so just the turning point or maybe the melting point where stitching meets with method of dyeing textiles. Well, so Itajima shibori, it is just the one technique. So the particular technique which I introduced recently. So and so I shared it as a kind of tutorial for making komabukura bag. So and this way of folding is just like the mixture of origami and well tie-dye technique, because here you can just manipulate the fabric. You can just press it using different types of clamps, elastics, plastic pieces or maybe wooden pieces, and sometimes even just chopsticks or maybe just sticks from ice cream. So to place them together and to press the fabric and afterwards just unfolding it after dye bath, you will really get a beautiful pattern. So which lots like geometry, and sometimes while watching it, so you see it like, wow, it's just from kaleidoscope. Well, I really encourage you to practice it at home because, well, so it's just a fun thing to do with kids, and also it's just a nice way to enlarge the number of crafts and creative practice to use in your studio. Well, so and here we have different way of folding. So typically it is called like accordion fold. So in those who just look through the tutorial which I shared recently, so may find it familiar because, well, so it's better to fold an equal sides. So a piece of cloth which has equal sides, like square. So with just with like very geometrical shapes, because it really provide you very, very nice result. Well, and somehow try to fold it before, and afterwards you just unfold it, unfold it plain, and you see how the lines which you just folded unfold. So it looks like folding and unfolding. So because all these lines, like creased lines, really will get you the idea of what possible patterns you will really achieve in the end. So after you dye the piece of cloth you have. Well, and here I just share you what I've been talking about, like using wood and maybe it's different types of plastic sticks. So because while this piece of sandwich, like textile sandwich, is pressed with so it can be really wooden or maybe plastic rulers, so which is used for drawing, and because so you can just get it any way you want, so just in different types of like shops, and so you don't really need to just be in a huge and very severe search to find suitable materials. And also, why not to use leads for bottles, like plastic leads for example, Coca-Cola bottle, so you can just press it together, so from each side of the folded piece, so tied with elastics, or maybe tied with string, so and put it into the dye bath, and just in an hour, so find a very beautiful piece of shibori. And so here there is a book which I also have in my collection, but it's tremendously heavy, so I cannot show really show it to you like in flesh and to open it, because it's gigantic, but it really features lots about traditional Japanese methods, and at the same time, so it has a beautiful collection of different types of clothes, so especially so the one which I just told you about, like during the Tokugawa era, and also just about different types, like people try to add some difference in the wardrobe. So, and there is just a beautiful visual story about the development of shibori technique, and sometimes embroidery as well, and also just about the way that people used this craft in their life. And so here there is also like new shibori, so the one which I really was speaking about just a few slides earlier. So here we have like fish, so it's koi fish, so I like them because they very so picturesque, I feel. So, and actually, so the image is constructed through just stitching, so lines and different types of patterns, and all the stitches were squeezed as well. And somehow, if we analyze this picture, we can see like, so lots of work was conducted. So, and as for the typical methods, which can be maybe really helping in this technique. So I feel like, relying on the way that you feel color, and maybe relying on the way that you really see the world, is also just a nice way to mix it up, to combine it with techniques, because sometimes people really become puzzled of what they really want to see in the piece of cloth, while for example they choose some design for restitching, for embroidery. But I feel it like, those who really created this kimono, they did not really think hard about the results. They just took some natural thing and they made it like the key feature of this dress, key feature of this kimono, and they were not interested about any details. So I think that somehow we really need to observe this way of perceiving the world, and also treating the craft, so and use it maybe, so just the way that Japanese craftsmen use. So to make some simple thing and to make it in a big scale. So and afterwards, so different people, so maybe around the globe, will really try to observe it and look it closer in order to get the idea of how it was made, or maybe so what things inspired the one who created this. Well, and how can we use shibori in everyday life? Well, it's also a nice question, because while I tried to think about how I can really introduce shibori to you, I thought about some, not like a beautiful thing to have at home, but also to use it practically. So, and I have found out that I don't have any bag or maybe any kind of like a basket for knitting to put different like ongoing project into it. So, and because now I'm knitting a sweater for my daughter, so I think like, I need something to put all these all these yarns to one place in order not to just to put them here and there all the time. So to keep it all together, so in one place. So, and I thought that, well, comic book work is a nice thing. But, so how can shibori used so to decorate the interior or maybe to decorate our life? So here I have found some examples, and these are huge like textile pieces which are really gigantic. So, and sometimes so they can also be used as a wall decoration, like a wall hanger. And well, so not only so in just big places like, well, I don't know, galleries or maybe different types of huge interiors and can be used. Well, different pieces of clothes are also possible to decorate for different occasions and with different shibori patterns. Well, here we can see how, well, the giants of fashion industry use this method. Well, especially I like Christian Dior's way of using shibori technique. And also, how can we use it for home decor, for using like simple things? So anthropology. So typically apply different crafts like folk crafts in creating, well, different types of furniture and different types of well, tiny lovely things. And here I have found the sofa, which was decorated with small scraps, which after just made a huge picture of a beautiful sofa. Well, so I think that I would like to have something of this kind at home. And also an old rug, which was refurbished, which was redecorated with these this like well, nice, absolutely beautiful technique. And so home decor things, so which are also about like mixing up like sashiko stitch and different cord embroidery, so which somehow becomes like a feature technique on the background made by shibori dyeing. Well, I feel like we are approaching to the end. Well, I'm also curious. So how do you use? Well, I feel like I need to switch. Yeah, here it's better. Well, comic book or bag. So which is also about using organic dyes. So because to color it, so I used onion shells, like onion skins. So and actually I used red onion because it really gives a good deep color. So, but it's not like as yellow as, for example, yellow onion, but so this type of bag, so it's nice to use as the keeper of different small things. So in here there are just metal ends on the cord. So you may apply this or may not apply this. So if you decide to use this pattern, which I shared recently, not like pattern but tutorial. So in here I have like my things, well, which really kept together. And also this type of shibori dyeing technique, which we practiced together with my daughter maybe, well, a couple years back. It was also kind of like funny craft. So this is a piece of silk scarf, and we used ice, and also it's kind of like not organic but chemical dyes, so which typically used for batik. So when we used ice in order to make the contrast of temperatures, which also provide good results with organic fibers, with natural fibers. So, and it's really nice and lovely. So because before we folded the piece of silk, and afterwards we just put onto it lots of ice and then just spread different shades, which all together made this lovely blurry pattern. But actually you can find there that there are just square, maybe just rectangular shapes, which really give us an idea so that this piece of textile was folded. Well, so I feel it like we need just to dive into the chat box and see if we have any questions, or maybe if we have any answers to the questions which I shared in the beginning. Okay, so how about your way of using shibori in your creative practice, and how do you do with using these type of folding textiles? And maybe so you have used maybe just only folding textiles, and maybe using shibori not like a dyeing technique, but maybe about like the way of manipulating and changing the surface, like plain surface into 3D surface. So maybe you have just an experience with it. I would really appreciate if you share it. So I think that today we don't have many people in our chat. But anyway, so I appreciate Marita for coming. So you're always with me. So it's really just incredible. So to feel the support even through the miles. So it really just helped me balance my broken parts in any time. So and the same about all the rest of you. So because, well, you give me a really tremendous handshake. Well, so I feel it like next time I will introduce you some other way of coloring the textile, especially because, well, nowadays it's not dark. So to practice this type of textile manipulation, so I'm going to feature the cyanotype and actually, so this really a part of mystery which also just make my heart bloom and at the same time, so it really makes my heart shake. Because, well, you never know what you finally get. But actually, so some time back, I really used this as a very creative tool, and well, it really gave me lots of interest, and at the same time, it gave me lots of puzzles, because, well, just like the place where textile meets chemistry, textile meets your private story, and also textile meets photography, or maybe sometime it not about photography, but maybe it's about just making a reflection created by light. Well, and this is just like a melting point of various interests that, well, I find really interest, and maybe so you also find it really interested and interest, and well, I really appreciate if you tell me anything about your way of using alternative type of printing, and actually using textile for various type of for realizing so your projects, especially if it's not about only textile, but maybe about just the combination of various techniques and various type of creative practice. Well, so I need to get into the chat box again. Okay, Marita. So you're welcome to share your ideas about, so maybe to share your experience about using shibori or maybe using organic dyes in your creative practice. So actually I appreciate the pictures that you shared, which feature the threads, embroidery threads that you shared just a month back. So it's very nice, and especially you mentioned that the shade, the palette, which just featured by these threads are very neutral, and they really can help us to obtain this old style, like the beginning of the 20th century style of embroideries with pale, neutral colors, which are absolutely beautiful. I feel it like natural dyes really give us lots of opportunities, because, well, a number of producers of threads nowadays, they have a very bright palette, and sometimes it takes lots of time to find necessary shade, and actually maybe sometimes it's really good way to pale it a bit, just like mixing and maybe making just a mixture of threads, like using 2 or 3 threads in order to make the reduction of color, to make the reduction of intensity. And I feel it like, well, using old threads is a good way to somehow to imitate maybe the movement, or maybe the mood of the project. So especially if we want to make in a style like old fashioned things. Okay. So I feel like maybe in early teen ages. So it was the time when I studied at kids art school, and so it was a series of classes about batik, and I was fascinated with an idea of using textile instead of paper, so in order to paint, because well, at home, so it was not welcome to use textile as a creative media, because well, my parents are about different conservative way of especially my father, about like a conservative way of perceiving art and using clothes or maybe using textile to do some manipulations with it to somehow to make it just not like a plain surface, or to make it not like just a white surface, so to add some colors to it, or maybe somehow to stitch it to make it diverse, so it's not just a cup of tea. And while just visiting the classes in art school, I really find like, well, I have found the like-minded people who really feel fascinated about like squeezing textile with putting some dyes onto it, and well, just in a while untying the knot and watching what's going on. So, and we used to dye textile, not just on textile, but some t-shirts and some like old clothes. And it was just like a breath of fresh air for me, because typically, so at home, so old clothes were just passed to the youngest. So maybe those who were just impossible, that clothes that were impossible to use, so they were just thrown away, or maybe used as some like things to, well, to use for cleaning things. But actually, this way of maybe perceiving textile, perceiving old clothes, really changed my mind. So, and actually, I feel it like, well, those Japanese who lived during Edo period and who tried to to breathe new life into their own clothes, like old clothes, were also fascinated by the way of decorating it, so using a knot and tying and squeezing. Well, yeah, thank you, Marita. So thank you ever so much. So I also appreciate your presence. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, if we don't have any any anything to share, so if well, actually, so the presentations that I have just came to the end, so I think that we are about to just finish. So, and I say, well, thank you for everyone who watches this video afterwards, after our meeting. So I thank those who were just seeing it in live. So because, well, so not only Marita witnessing this event, but also my lovely family who are supporting me nowadays all the time. So, and yeah, so it shows me like finger up. So I say thank you, because, well, so you make my heart bloom. Well, see you next month. So, and in August, I'm going to share some tutorials, which are also about flowers, which are also about my deep love to creation and embroidery. So, and I hope that you will feel the love which I share. So thank you ever so much. So thank you for coming, and thank you for interest and your support. So bye. See you soon.